There's a fuss going on at the moment about whether Lloyd Austin, the US Defense Secretary, is in a position to make any serious decisions or to take full responsibility for what is happening, because he's 70 years old and has been in hospital without telling anybody for the last week, going through some sort of elective surgery and complications following that. And he says, I recognise I could have done the job better, ensuring the public was appropriately informed. I commit to doing better. But this is important. This was my medical procedure, and I take full responsibility for my decisions about disclosure. And there was somebody who was delegated to act in his place, a person called Kathleen Hicks, his deputy. But the question is who actually had their finger on the button, because if there was a national emergency and in a time of international military crises, I think there's every chance there could be a national emergency. It is a bit inappropriate of the person who's ultimately responsible to go off and have elective surgery, and we still don't know what that elective surgery is. And of course, everybody is extraordinarily curious. What has he had done? The whole idea of responsibility is a difficult one, and we can go back, for example, to the charge of the Light Brigade. Well, Tennyson turned that military disaster into a victory for heroism, and it's a remarkable achievement. He did it, of course, without being there, but the poem is superb. You can hear the horse charge in the beat of the poem, in the trochees, dum-ta-dum, dum-ta-dum, and it gets faster and faster, and all his little verbal linguistic tricks speed up the poem and make it all the more exciting. But when you look to the details, and the details are beautifully played out in the, I think, 1967 film, the one with the wonderful Richard Williams animation, interspersed throughout the action. So you see the gritty reality of the military action, and then that is commented on by Richard Williams animation, based on the Illustrated London News and Punch and the propaganda. And if you haven't seen the film, it's well worth going out and trying to find it, because it's a spectacular piece of work in all ways. At the end of the film, there's a question about who is responsible, and it's played for humour brilliantly by John Gielgud. And when you look at the history, the order to attack, that foolish order, which led to 676 people in the charge itself, 107 killed, 187 wounded, 50 captured, 400 horses killed, and a signal of disaster, probably the beginning of the end of the British Empire, that very short empire, which was extraordinarily efficient in terms of both good things it did and bad things it did. But it was a very brief empire, and it lingers on, of course, in the way some people think, and it lingers on. Some of its goodness lingers on, I think, in the Commonwealth. But despite the foolishness of the charge of the Light Brigade, Britain and its allies still went on to defeat Russia in the Crimean War. And the Crimean War also defined or energized or created modern nursing under Florence Nightingale, in Scutari, away from the heat of battle on the Asian side of the Bosphorus in Istanbul. And the hospital is still there, you can see it. But the real interest is that Lord Raglan told Lord Lucan to get the guns. Lord Lucan delegated to Lord Cardigan, the man with the bright red hair. And the note which was sent from Lord Raglan to Lord Lucan was carried by Louis Nolan, this sort of visionary soldier. But it was written by General Airy. So who was the person who lost the Light Brigade? As John Gielgud says, "Ooh, it's not my hand. This is not my handwriting. You have lost the Light Brigade, the finest troop of light." It's a beautiful piece of satire and a wonderful analysis of history, but also of problem shifting. And it goes on today. Who gives the orders? Who is ultimately responsible? And often there isn't one individual who is responsible. I'm not going down a sort of Marxist interpretation of history here, by the way, be warned. And I'm also not embracing conspiracy theories, which I shun. But there is a mood, and the people in charge are as much affected by that mood as the people who are actually doing the dirty work. And if you take the recent book by James O'Brien, who is such a wonderful author, really, and it's very amusing. He points out in his book that there's this conspiracy theory that he, Carol Vorderman, and what's the footballer's name? Anyway, Lineker, are single-handedly, that little trinity of individuals are single-handedly undermining every good that the government is trying to do. And he sneers at that. It's absurd. It's absurd if that's the best the government can come up with, if that's the best that Tufton Street and others, the ERG, can come up with, to say this cabal of three independent thinking individuals. But he has two beautiful phrases in his book. One, he talks about deceit, division, and distraction. And the other one, he talks about the congregation of circumstance. And we all know about the deceit, division, and distraction, but the congregation of circumstance is such a lovely expression. And I think that sums up the Lloyd Austin thing. It sums up the charge of the Light Brigade, and it sums up the present problems with implementing Brexit.